Hello again. The thumbnail to this video shows the percentage of British 18-year-olds who took A levels and then were given an A or A star this year. It is immediately apparent that something very odd is going on. More than twice as many teenagers have been given A's or A star grades for their A levels as was the case a few years ago. One possibility is that the current school leavers are twice as intelligent and twice as well educated as those who left school a couple of years ago. Another explanation would be that attending school actually harms the education of young people, and that closing down schools for months on end result in a better standard of education. Neither of these hypotheses sound really very plausible, do they? It's puzzling, because you would think that all that time off school would cause grades to go down rather than to rocket up like that. The third possibility is that teachers are desperate to show that they're not a lazy bunch of devils who have been slacking at home for months, and that to prove this they've decided to give their pupils higher grades than they earned, so that it looks as though they, the teachers, have been doing their job properly during the pandemic. I might mention here, by the way, that all teachers cheat like mad if it will help their pupils get good grades. It's nothing to do with the pandemic, it's just in the nature of the job. This is purely a matter of self-interest, because if their pupils do poorly in GCSEs or A levels, it could look as though they haven't been taught properly. The head of a school is always ticked off if a year do poorly in the examinations, and teachers know this. That's why they were very liberal with awarding marks in coursework when that was a big part of GCSE and A levels. And, of course, it is exactly why coursework has largely been phased out. It's hopeless expecting teachers to mark their own pupils' work. And yet that's just what has been done, with predictable consequences. I say predictable consequences, but I don't think that all that many people have realised yet what those consequences are going to be. To begin with, imagine what would happen next year. The howls of anger if things were to return to normal, and next summer only 20% of A-level students got top grades instead of the 45% this year. People would say that it was horribly unfair, but of course it won't happen. No, these super high grades are probably here to stay. Already there's talk of abolishing the old style examinations entirely and perhaps relying upon teachers' assessments next year as well, and also in the future, so that there's not a sudden drop in A's and A stars. I think this is likely to happen. Now, this is a problem for universities. The A star was originally introduced so that they could distinguish between the absolute best students taking their A levels. The problem is that medical schools and so on, as well as universities like Oxford and Cambridge, rely upon those A-level grades to see which students are the best each year academically. If only a very small number are getting top marks, then that's one thing. If, as is the case this year, almost half the grades awarded are A's and A stars, then they won't have any idea at all who the brightest students actually are. This is where things get bad for ordinary working class students. Many universities now feel they'll have to introduce their own entrance examinations to find the best students from an academic viewpoint. This will favour kids at private schools and those from well-to-do families. The reason is that the kind of examination set currently at universities like Oxford can be coached for, and however much it is claimed that they are neutral, they are really tilted towards the middle classes. To give an example, those wanting to study PPE at Oxford, philosophy, politics and economics, have to take the TSA, which is the Thinking Skills Assessment, before the university even decides if it wants to interview them. I give a link in the description to this video to a bit about the TSA. which is rather like an extended IQ test. Other courses like medicine and law have other examinations before you know if you'll be invited to interview. The thing is, you can practice TSA and also you can be coached in time management for the examination and other things. Private schools do this for those applying to certain subjects at Oxford, and parents hire tutors too to give their children an edge. An ordinary pupil from a comprehensive who has never encountered a test of this kind is unlikely to make as good a show of it as somebody who's been well prepared. This is why middle-class white kids dominate in certain courses at Oxford, like PPE. You see very few black kids there, very few working-class kids, because it's the kids that have come from middle-class homes and have been coached and taught how to do it that do well at the thinking skills assessment, and they'll get on to. That's how they get to study PPE at Oxford. It looks almost certain that more tests of this kind are going to be devised by the Russell Group universities so that they can distinguish which of those 45% of pupils who got A's and A stars are really bright. The less academic universities won't do this, and so that's where most working class and black students will end up applying to. What we are seeing here is social mobility being thrown into reverse, and it is largely caused by this idiotic inflation of A-level results. Just look again at the graph in the thumbnail to this video and ask yourself who thought this was a good idea which would end well. Trust me, the proportion of working class and black pupils at the best universities is going to plummet in coming years. This is what happens when a government doesn't stop to think what they're about to do. Everybody knew that closing schools would damage children's educations, but I honestly don't think that people realise yet just what a disaster this will be for the average kid at a comprehensive. Oxford and Cambridge will once again become the preserve of the wealthy.